Hey, welcome to the Backyard Professor commentaries on Scripture. I'm going to call it commentaries on Scripture. I have back in the studio with me my good friend, Travis Overley, and we are going to continue this discussion of the Hermetic, you heard it right, the Hermetic slash Kabbalistic temple endowment, trying to get into the background of what was Joseph Smith doing. So let's get this show on the road. Okay, we are excited to get back onto this incredibly interesting topic because the more we get together and work through things, the more astonished we are at how much more there is to this than meets the eye, right, Travis? We have just kept finding more materials than we had ever anticipated, which is always a good thing. So that means that we are in the process of getting more information in our head so that we can turn around and share it with you. Now, we have a subject that probably is mildly comfortable, and yet there's so much that we never hear with this. And so we expand. And so Travis has brought out some amazing points from my take on it on Enoch. And not only just Enoch being translated, but there's so much more to him. And we get glimpses and bits and pieces in the different books of Enoch. How many do we have now, Travis? There's 1 and 2 and 3 that I'm aware of.
Yeah, there's a whole corpus of literature. It's associated with him directly, or one of his, some archetype that's, a Hermetic archetype associated with him. There's just really a lot there.
That's what makes Enoch so important, isn't it? Why don't you elaborate? Give us some your idea on this theme of the Enochian archetype and why it matters to the church.
Well, where we started with was the Hermetic archetype and Enoch, and that Enoch acts as a great intercessor between the heavens and the earth, a great mediator, bringing down the light of the heavens on the earth for creation, as well as knowledge, arts, all these kinds of things. And in that sense, he serves as a type for a creator. And in the Latter-day Saint tradition, there is a context for looking up at Enoch, or the figure of Enoch, the type of Enoch, as a type for a creator, or at least a joint creator with the Father and Son. We, in this process of creation and in this process of mediation, the what we're going to look at a little bit today is what's called the Cosmic Covenant.
Yeah.
And the Cosmic Covenant, I think it really has a really, really close relationship with the Jewish concept of Tikkun Olam, which is
Yeah.
similar to a restoring creation or raising creation, perfecting creation, that kind of thing. And so, the two questions that we might go about answering today would be, number one, what is the Cosmic Covenant, and number two, is there, or what is the LDS context for the Cosmic Covenant?
Now, if I could add something about Enoch here that is quite interesting to me, when I was reading the Hugh Nibley series, and then I broke off and began to read the actual books of Enoch myself, and got James H. Charlesworth and Odeberg and all those guys, although he goes to third Enoch, which is way later. That's like 400 AD. The Enoch texts we're talking about are probably the first couple of centuries BC, which kind of dates with Daniel. It's in the pseudepigrapha, the big rise of apocalyptic and Second Temple Judaism. In some of those texts, Enoch's ascension grants him a place on the throne, and the rabbis got quite upset with this. They said, no, wait. I mean, this becomes the two powers in heaven controversy in Judaism, but Enoch is actually called the little Yahweh. He is deified. And in one of the stories, I can't remember which rabbi, it's been a while since I read this, but they actually have an issue with this. So they say that Metatron was called forward when Enoch was transformed, and it describes his incredible bodily transformation. His eyes became fire, and his spirits became, his blood and bones became like liquid spirit. I mean, it was sensational description. And after he became exalted and he was invited to sit on the throne, one of the rabbinical ideas of this is Metatron was told to go whip Enoch. If I remember right, it was whip Enoch so that it dropped him down a little bit more because he was so highly exalted. This ties in, don't you think, with your principle of this Enoch archetype being, even a co-creator. He is the little Yahweh. He was actually identified with Metatron too. And the etymology of Metatron has been said in some etymologies. The scholars are still wrangling about this. Nothing's solved yet, but they say the one on the throne, the Metatron. When I first read that, I got that out of Andrei Orlov, my good friend Andrei Orlov, who is a fabulous Enoch scholar. He's out of Marquette University. And so this idea that we have here a mere human, a person, and his exaltation is described as he ascends to greater and greater glory. This is the Isaiah 6 theophany. This is the Ezekiel theophany, the throne of Ezekiel. This is Merkava mysticism. This is the Judaic / Kabbalistic / Enochian / Hermetic background that you and I are advocating. Perhaps it would help us all if we enlarged our context here, right?
I would argue that the most fundamental core doctrine of the Restored Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the doctrine of divine investiture, and that Joseph established very early. And when we read his texts, it's something that comes through and through. And so in this Enoch archetype, Enoch is really a manifestation of this divine investiture, where he is given a role as creator, as a type for God himself, as a the as a son. I would even say as a firstborn son of the Son. We'll say
the Son of Man theme. Yeah.
And so that's something that, Latter-day Saints sometimes take some heat for, when people say, oh, you guys maybe believe you're going to become gods or something like that. I like how Margaret Barker tones that down and, makes it into more angelic beings. It tempers it a little bit. But the idea of this, a type of exaltation, a type for receiving all that God receives, receiving a place on the throne, this kind of thing, really fits into covenant. Particularly when covenant in the Jewish context, really emphasizes kinship. So, becoming an actual son, or becoming an actual daughter, an actual, whether through the idea of betrothal, or through, just a literal type of marriage, that coming together, which also I would say is a strong theme in this Hermetic representation.
Yeah, that would tie into the adoption of the king as the son of the god too, wouldn't it? So here comes kingship into this cosmic covenant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kingship plays a big role. And this one I thought was kind of fun. King of the World, Kunan, has a chapter where the King of the World is in two parts: Metatron and the Shekinah, male and female. Excuse me.
Nice. Oh yeah, you're all good. Male and female. Yes, the this theme of the male and female, while he's getting his kids in the other room, is really huge. I had never put together that it was the Metatron and the Shekinah. That's a nice touch. Keep going. I ad-libbed for you.
Well, and that's an interesting play on two roles: the Shekinah and the Metatron role, as kind of two parts coming together in the ascension role. In the
essential doctrine of the Hermetic materials and of Joseph Smith's endowment. What a tie-in, huh? The male and female becoming one again. Fascinating.
And we will, after we go through a little bit to talk about the cosmic covenant, we will look into a Latter-day Saint context for it.
Yeah.
There's a pretty good one, I think.
There is. There's a good one. You want to start talking about the cosmic covenant, or do you want me to? We both got articles by Margaret Barker and Father Murray. And didn't you have a Jewish scholar? What was her name?
Her name is Rachel Elior.
Yes, Elior.
It might be pronounced Rachel Elior, but I don't know.
Elior.
But she's an incredible scholar, and she wrote a book called The Three Temples.
Oh, I gotta get that one.
And within that book, in the fourth chapter, is a chapter called Enoch, son of Jared, and the Solar Calendar. And what she does is she explains how Enoch and the solar calendar representative of a viewpoint that linked all of creation, the sevenfold 7-day creation, to a how do I say this, backyard professor, to the eternal everlasting covenant, the great oath, hey,
yeah, that'll work, because that's how Margaret Barker words it, so that'll work. Yeah.
And I think those are all interchangeable when we read the everlasting covenant of peace, the everlasting covenant, the eternal covenant, the great oath, and the cosmic covenant. All those, we're talking about the same thing. And
it may be like a multifaceted glass ball in the discos that reflected all the lights as they spun. It was one ball, but lots of beams of light. So And we're all familiar with this idea of covenant, but this cosmic covenant seems to me to add another dimension. And what is that dimension?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Okay, well, let me get into Barker real quick. Hold on. Okay, now this is her article, The Book of Enoch and the Cosmic Sun, or the Cosmic Sin. I'm thinking of David Feidler, Jesus Christ, Son of God, SUN, and that's got some good stuff in early Christian stuff. This is out of The Ecologist for January 2000. The theme with this is the unity with nature. And that's the foundation of our existence on the planet. That's what I was getting to, as I was saying, in the church, we're used to this theme of covenant, stay on the covenant path, follow the covenant path, the baptism, repentance, faith in Jesus Christ, and the gift of the Holy Ghost. But it doesn't seem to advance much beyond that. Am I misunderstanding that? Does it seem like it goes a whole lot further than that every time we talk about covenant? That is, until you get to the temple, and then you make what we call temple covenants. But even that's not the cosmic covenant, is it?
No, I mean, in a way, I would say that all of the temple covenants accumulated together are, in effect, a type for the cosmic covenant. But in itself, there's a big component that's missing. The metaphor that we use in the church to talk about covenant is also problematic, because here we hear things like we make covenants, we follow covenants, we keep covenants, we've commodified covenant into this tangible thing that but at the same time, we sometimes don't really get at what it's talking about. The analogy that I would prescribe for this would be obedience is to commandment as responsibility is to covenant. And
okay, so obedience is to commandments as responsibility is to covenant.
Yeah, I would suggest that you can't obey a covenant. You either it's covenant is the right metaphor is proximity, closeness to the king or distance from the king. A proximity of living within the covenant or outside of the covenant is the expression of the distance of the stars, the moon, and the sun. Those kinds of relationships of proximity, I think, express what covenant really means a lot more than this idea of obedience.
Yes, I like that. I have never heard it put that way before. That's cool. That's nice.
And in addition to that, we recall in the New Testament that the most obedient of all the people in the time of Jesus were the Pharisees. I mean, they were obedient as could be, but as Jesus always pointed out, look at the orphans and the widows. You're not taking responsibility for the people. How can you claim this authority from God and you've left part of his creation in poverty or something like
squalor? Yeah.
So in that sense, we see an expression where Jesus immediately shows that obedience is not really tied to covenant. Covenant is tied to something else, and that's why I would say responsibility. When we talk about a marriage covenant, are we talking about an obedience relationship, or are we talking about a relationship of responsibility to one another?
Good analogy.
The metaphor that is used in Latter-day Saint, theology, I would say that, for covenant is very limiting, and so limiting that, we as we'll see a little bit later, we miss some of the greater parts of the expression of what it really is, what it entails.
And I think part of this too, in Barker's article, The Book of Enoch and Cosmic Sin, she says, one Enoch refers, we read of a great oath which binds the forces of the creation. So this binding on earth as it is in heaven thing is in the Enoch texts, and it is a cosmological aspect to it. We bind each other to each other through covenants in marriage and stuff like that. There's also a vertical binding, apparently. And she says in 1 Enoch 41, the heavenly bodies, all of them, are kept on their course in accordance with the oath which binds them. So the oath could be gravity. We could be seeing the effects of the oath, even though we don't know what gravity is yet. The point is, the whole universe is truly bound together by that oath of gravity, to kind of put a science metaphor onto this. But the powerful oath, they say, is entrusted to the archangel Michael. Now, this gets interesting because in the temple, Michael plays a big part in the endowment. So that's kind of fun. And then the oath secures the order of the creation, and it holds the heavens firm, and it keeps the earth secure. So there's something about the sea being checked with the barrier of sand around it, the courses of the sun, the moon, the stars, like you were saying, with distance, are also regular in their courses because of this binding, whatever that is, part of this covenant of creation, this cosmic covenant. And what happens, they function properly when mankind takes care of not only himself, like you're pointing out the Pharisees in the New Testament, but with the earth itself. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, and in that, with the binding, we find that in the covenant, the binding what Rachel Elior is describing in Enoch and the solar calendar is a binding of time and space. So by creating the calendar, time is ordered and given a structure, and where that time is ordered and structured is some geographic location, some space. I'll even call it a microclimate that has its own nuances and its own optimums and its own laws. And so the other aspect of covenant is that's spoken of in the scriptures is always two parts: people and place. So, for example, the new name of Israel is given, and it refers to a people, and it also refers to a place. The name Zion is given, and it refers to a people, and it refers to a place. And so this idea of a covenant between people and place is also very central in the temple complex and in the
so it's not just people that's going to be holy. It's the place of the earth. In fact, I've got a slide that kind of helps us see something like this. This relationship, as it were, between the animals, the earth, mankind, this whole idea of abundance and beauty and being a part of the creation and in it. That is what the cosmic covenant about. And if we break that, then we release forces of the destiny and creation. And the Hebrew word for covenant, berit, is thought to be related to the word for binding, while the German word for covenant is Bund. The verb is binden, binding. So it's a binding oath. It's a binding oath of life. It's a binding oath of living and being alive and helping all life advance, flourish, etc. Does that sound about right to you? Is that how you understand it?
Yeah, that sounds great. It's and it's implied that there's a mediator or an intercessor to bind it.
Oh, there you go. Very good. That's why you're saying Enoch is the archetype.
Yeah, and this mediator of creation. And
that's a pretty big role. We usually assign that to Jesus.
Yeah, and
after all, Enoch is the little Yahweh. That's fascinating.
and it seems that at least in that Second Temple period, there was a lot of ambiguity about the character of the angel of the presence, or the Metatron, the lesser Yahweh, the Enoch figure, that type. There were times, I think, that even all the way to Jesus, when those that type was used to wonder, or to consider whether Jesus was him. Was Jesus Enoch? Was Jesus Elijah? Was that was a considerable question. And we'll find in maybe some of the more Gnostic sects that came afterwards that was one of the belief systems that was around, that Jesus was the return of the Enoch Hermetic Archetype type figure. In Latter-day Saint theology, however, that's not the case. It's very clear in Joseph Smith's translation of the vision of the Book of Moses that Enoch did have a one-on-one dialogue conversation with Jehovah himself, and that conversation constitutes the mediation of the covenant between Mother Earth and her inhabitants and Jehovah.
Yeah, that's chapter. What chapter is that?
Chapter 7 of Joseph's translation of the vision of the Book of Moses.
Yeah, so that binding is still there, but Enoch's role is somewhat different.
Yeah, and I think what Joseph Smith did is he illuminated the role in a really consistent way. Right along the lines of what we are reading in the Jewish mysticism and some of the texts that we'll be talking about.
So this idea, yeah, actually Barker says this too. The great oath, the cosmic covenant, the eternal covenant are in essence the same thing. I wanted to see the idea. It's with the water that one is baptized and then bound because of that. And the power over the sea was the proof of the divine power. So in a way, the baptismal font could be a metaphor, a symbol of the sea with which we are dunked in. And then this gets us to the flood of Noah. Yeah. So that in the Joseph Smith theological thinking, we're not the only ones that go through rituals. We're not the only ones that's going to be saved. That's fantastically interesting.
Yeah, and I think that what that expresses is a much more loving and forgiving creation and world that we live in. It's a more loving God in that way. Maybe we shouldn't get too far ahead with that. Here's something that Robert Murray, who wrote the book Cosmic Covenant.
Oh yeah.
He I really like the way he breaks it up, and he came across his idea for the Cosmic Covenant from just chaos and order. He was seeing these patterns of chaos and order, and how covenant was expressed as either binding order or unleashing chaos. So when we find some of the problems in the Old Testament are tied to somebody or something defying the cosmic order or the cosmic covenant, going against the way of creation or the order of creation. And
I'm going to grab the book. You keep talking.
There's a couple elements that Robert Murray brings up, and I'll just list them off. The binding of cosmic elements by a covenant oath, the breach of a covenant by rebellious or divine beings, its reestablishment by God in the eternal covenant, earthly effects of the breach of cosmic covenant, ritual preservation of cosmic and earthly order, and an ideal picture of cosmic harmony, like humans, animals, and creation, this kind of thing. So Robert Murray, he's finding a synthesis in all of these things in the scriptures that tie to what he describes as the cosmic covenant. And it does refer to the binding of cosmic elements of the creation.
And this is the book I wanted to go get. Segue right into that briefly. This is The Cube of Space, the Container of Creation by Kevin Townley. And I will show you the diagram.
Mm-hmm.
The reason the cube of space is limiting is because it gives a chance for the creator to form reality, to form the cosmos out of the chaos. And he does that by binding the different directions and sides and corners of the cube of space. And when you connect all those corners, you get that Jewish Star of David. Is that not interesting from a symbolic viewpoint, a metaphor viewpoint? The cosmic covenant is a real binding. That's what gives life. Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, keep going. Keep going. Don't stop now.
Well, where should we go?
Well, Father Murray says sin entails the alienation of our nature. And so in this way, the definition of sin, you say, well, you're breaking the covenant or whatever. Well, you idiot, if you're going to get up on the cliff and walk off the cliff, that's a really stupid sin, and you will pay the price, because the cosmic nature is not overcome because you're going to stupidly defy it. It works regardless of what you want. I think in a way, and I'm being somewhat sarcastic, kind of flippant, but it holds a serious point that it relates us to the earth. We are a part. In fact, here we go. We are a part of the earth, not apart from the earth. This earth produces our food for us. This, whether it's the grains or the meat or the fish, it produces the water. And here's a hint. This reminds us of Doctrine and Covenants section 89, doesn't it?
Yeah, we can go in that direction. Again, the covenant, when we look at it from that ancient Israelite context, was always tied to a people and a place. And I would describe this concept as a type. It's embodiment. That's what we're talking about. It's a covenant for embodiment of this mortal frame, and also embodiment into this mortal existence.
Which is a limiting factor on chaos. Otherwise, there's no order.
Yeah,
there's the binding. That's fascinating how that works, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't know how are we gonna segue into this.
What are you trying to get into? Which part?
Here's the question. The question would be, is there an LDS context for a cosmic covenant? And I would argue, yes, there is an LDS context for the cosmic covenant. And not only is there a context for it, but it's tied to the same things that we're talking about, and also the character of Enoch, and also relates directly with temples. So Enoch, temples, and the cosmic covenant are woven together, inseparable. And where we'll find this in the Latter-day Saints theology is first in the Moses 7, chapter 7, whereby Moses sees a vision of Enoch, and Enoch is granted a great vision of creation and from the beginning to the end. And in this process, he sees its destruction. He mourns over the destruction. And there's this great appeal that Enoch makes, similar to the appeals that we hear from some of the other patriarchs. We hear Abraham asking before Sodom is destroyed, will you save the city if there's only this many righteous, kind of thing. Well, this is almost what Enoch is doing with creation, and he's acting as this type of mediator to between the inhabitants of the earth, the complaint from Mother Earth of her inhabitants, to the great God Jehovah, who is the Son. So
well, he was saying here too, in this Moses 7, he gave the Garden of Eden and he gave man agency. And then he says, well, my name is endless and it's holiness and all that. And he says, the problem with you guys is you're trashing the earth. And so what I have to do is I have to come along and look at the stupid destruction that you're making of my terrific home. In fact, I have a slide here that I will show while I'm talking about this. And I want my audience to take this question seriously. I'm not joking with it. What Enoch is saying is we need to keep track of the earth because it weeps. It actually weeps in this chapter because of the torment that it's in, because of the pollution that mankind gives the earth. So why are we doing this to the earth? Yet part of the mediator, part of the covenant is binding up the salvation of both men and earth. And that's really important. That's part of this binding. We aren't to have dominion to destroy and ruin. And let's face it, this is the only home we have. So we better wise up. You ruin this home and you're an idiot because it's suicide. You don't get to fly off into space, into the Andromeda galaxy to find another Earth. Not happening, not here, not now. This is where we're at. So take care of the earth is the question. That is the cosmic covenant, isn't it? Sin is sin, not only against people, but against the earth. And that's what this Moses 7 seems to me to be saying, right?
Yeah, it does. But it includes a real happy note too, and that is that that because of Enoch's plea, not only did he receive the promise that the Son would be born into a fleshly body on the earth at a point of time, and but also that he would come again. So, along with this covenant, which began at the very, this is like we're talking about creation, the period of creation.
Garden of Eden. Yeah.
He's received, Enoch's seen the destruction of the whole world all the way to the end. And then he's taking it upon himself to ask for, can't we still save it? Can't we still preserve it? Can't we do it? And that is exactly the type of soul that I would suggest what the Lord wants. Somebody who's willing to, like Abraham, I don't want to destroy these people. I have a love for creation, love for all of it. What can we do? Is there anything that we can do? And so, that unfortunately, in the way that Latter-day Saints, the way that we look at covenant, it's so individualistic, and we've isolated covenant to be just something about the person and the self, and raising higher morality to our group, but very little is said about our relationship with the environment, our relationship with ecology and economy. And that seems to be a really big theme that is is present in the scriptures, Old and New Testament, but it somehow just didn't make the cut in modern Latter-day Saint theology.
Well, not only us though, not only the Latter-day Saints, but I just read this commentary in this fantastic book, The Earth Story in the Psalms and the Prophets, by Dr. Wallace. And he says Psalm 65 is exactly that principle, is Christians and the Jews, when they became too individualistic, thinking only of themselves and ignored their environment, then the earth itself began to fight back. The covenant, the joy, the greatness of the creation, the voice of the earth. They believed in Psalm 65. I spent a couple hours on it, reading it in the Hebrew this morning, that the earth was a living being and that it can live and die and be resurrected. It can be baptized. That's the symbolism of the flood, etc. This covenant does not exclude that. It is humankind who has broken stuff into organic living and inorganic non-living. That is us. That is not the cosmos of the Creator. Everything is alive. Well, I mean, that's the eastern side of this oblate spheroid we live on. And I think they've got that more right than we here in the West, in my opinion. So, but yeah, that's mentioned all in Hebrew scriptures.
That Psalm 65 is wonderful. It really it also shows the natural role of the king in the environment, describing particularly with the water. We were in the concept of the righteous king is one who brings a good mediation, a heavenly mediation, to atone for the entire creation so that it's restored. And if it's restored, then it's blessed with dew and rain. So the king, if they're in the ancient days, we discussed this on the last video a little bit. If the king failed his duties, or if the priesthood failed their duties, what they would have is drought.
Yeah. And today, right now, I so promise, sincerely, really, Utah does no longer take that as a metaphor. They are in a serious drought that is fundamentally life-threatening because the bottom of the Great Salt Lake is full of arsenic. And if that gets exposed, if that Great Salt Lake goes too low, not enough water, that arsenic will go airborne. And you're talking tens of millions of sick people.
Consider this in Utah, especially as a case study. Consider that this environmental damage has been done largely, in part, or completely by Latter-day Saint priesthood.
Yeah. The businessmen who want to make hundreds of billions so that the prosperity gospel becomes true, when in point of fact, that's missing the boat of the cosmic covenant. The prosperity is not us. It's everything. That's where we're missing out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, we are coming on 45 minutes, my friend. We are having so much fun. I want to try to watch the time. Shall we continue this in a second recording, in a second video?
Yeah, let's bring up one thing though, and that is that where this for our second video, we'll discuss a lot more on the Latter-day Saint side. And so what that's going to entail is looking into where Joseph really got his temple motifs from.
Okay,
what we're going to show is that he's dialed in to this cosmic covenant from section 89, from section 58, 59, 88, and 89. Those in particular really express these things between the relationship responsibility of people to one another and also to the land itself and in the environment. And they also carry the strongest archetype for divine investiture, which would be a way that would be represented today in maybe an ordinance, an ordinance of washing feet and anointing. So the role of the king, the role of the priesthood, and the role of wisdom, Mother Earth, are all integral in this conception of Joseph's temple, which was long before he was ever exposed to any of the Masonic stuff. So what I will like to show is that, Joseph, whatever he was informed by, his visions, that content was more closely aligned with Jewish mysticism under the Hermetic umbrella rather than anything Masonic at all.
Fascinating. What a great note to end on. Yeah, let's end this one, and we will pick this back up in a continuation video, because we want to try to keep these relatively short and yet informative so that we don't overdo it. And besides, that gives us a chance to make about 200,000 more videos in the up and coming year. So we're going to call it good here, you guys. We will be back with the second video on this, a continuation. Technically, this is the second video, isn't it, Travis? We've already started the first. We did the first one live. So yeah. Okay, so we're going to continue on. Thanks for watching, everybody. Give us the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. And you guys have a good day. We're going to get out of here, and we shall return.